If you clicked on this video, there's a non-zero chance you already know what Dogs in the Vineyard is. If you don't, let me summarize it for you. It's the Mormon reformist RPG written by Vincent Baker, who would later go on to write Apocalypse World. But I'm here to tell you about it, partner, and tell you why it's not bad, but in the wrong way. Dogs in the Vineyard is an early 2000s story game about the faith, or more accurately, the faith of all things in the King of Life reborn. From there, you will take the role of the order set apart to the preservation of faith and the faithful, or God's watchdogs. Your goal is simple: venture through the land of the faith, rooting out heresy, crime, problems, and generally trying to be a good community helper, as you are a mixture of preacher, lawman, cowboy, crusader, and theocratic-sponsored demon hunter. You're also probably 16 with a swanky coat. The game part of this game is a dice assignment system. You have a set of dice reflected with your stats, traits, and relationships. Most are assigned to things, such as 4d6 to acuity, 1d4 plus 1d10 to raised in the mountains, or 1d6 for blood relatives. Your equipment also has dice assigned to them, often in the range of 1d4 to 1d10. Whenever you're in a challenge, you'll start off by assigning a set of dice tied to a trait and a stat, while an opponent matches. From there, the dogs will raise, see, and escalate. Raising has the combatants put forward 2 dice that needs to be matched. To match, you need to see, which there are 3 stages of which. You can reverse the blow, letting you keep the dice you used. Blocking has you ignore the effect by spending your dice, and taking the blow has you take fallout dice equal to the number of dice you used. Escalating is where things get odd, is where you add more of your character into the conflict, changing it significantly. It's you pouncing on someone after a tense debate, or just drawing your gun on them. If you're the last person standing at the end of this, you've won and can narrate the results. Now that seems pretty simple, right? Well, here's some of the nitty-gritty stuff that's hard to summarize. The system is used for all conflict resolution, and while it may work sometimes, it doesn't really factor in some of the nuances simply due to how the stats are. Things will inevitably escalate to a gunfight because that's all you can do, and while a gun is scary, it's really not, because somebody can also just ignore it mechanically. Drawing a gun doesn't have anything tied to it outside of adding its own dice to it. This is coupled with the fact that playing with multiple people can get a bit slow, as everybody's sorting out their own dice, trying to figure out the math more than anything. The fallout dice are an interesting idea, but as it's the only way to improve and also get crippled, you end up both not wanting and wanting to acquire it, which makes it an odd mechanic, but also makes guns threatening, as that's the only way to really die. This isn't even factoring how rigid character creation actually is, however, very mechanical and very detailed. It's also very short. However, here's the main issue. The mechanics are fine. It's a bit loosey-goosey, but welcome to story game nonsense. The real issue boils down to the most simple thing possible. Dogs in the Vineyard doesn't know what it wants to be. To clarify a bit, Dogs in the Vineyard is in fact 3 dogs in a vineyard. The first is Vincent's Truth, as Dogs in the Vineyard is a game about being powerful enough in a strange organization that you have a desire to reform the church in a more egalitarian light. It's your responsibility to realize that the faith is being used to oppress people and not really uplift them. This is the most boring and arguably worst version of the game, and it's also the intended way to play it. The second is the Spirit, as Dogs in the Vineyard is a game about being teenagers way out of your goddamn depth, trying to manage a strict hierarchy and survival its trials and tribulations. It's also about balancing moral, theocratic, and secular law together and failing horribly at it. The third is an actually interesting game, as Dogs in the Vineyard is a game about being magic cowboy exorcists, traveling from community to community to root out the faithless and deliver justice with a big eye to the demonic threat that wants to tear our community apart. These 3 games don't actually mix, as Vincent's Truth is more of the broad look at things, while the writing waxes and wanes a bit. The spirit and the meaning of the game isn't really encouraged, as again, this is the Mormon reformist RPG, and thinking too hard about it is bad, while the interesting game is buried underneath the 2 others. And of those 3, which one is sparking joy in your mind? Mormon Reformist, the tabletop RPG, let's talk about the emotional weight of responsibility, or Doom, Yeehaw Chucklefucks Edition. The game is truthfully all 3 at once, but never any of them at the same time. It's 100 plus pages of sorta. You sorta are Mormon exorcists. You sorta have a combat system. You sorta have exorcism rules. And I think that's Dogs in the Vineyard's ultimate sin, being more interesting than Vincent intended. I want to explore more of the setting, but it isn't there. I want to understand what what angle it's going for, but it isn't there. I want to see what Dogs in the Vineyard's 2E, Rudy Mormon, would look like, but we'll never see it, and if we do, we'll have to contend with it being the lamest version of Vincent's truth. My name is Notepad, and this was Dogs in the Vineyard. If you like what I do here, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you all to the many plutocrats in funding my endeavors. Goodbye.
They call